Good day, YouTube, and welcome to another episode of the Albino Rhino beer review. Today, you have the Rhino, and we're going to drink a beer from the Black Donnelly's Brewing Company in Middleton, is it? Mitchell, Ontario. Now, every one of these beers I have prefaced it with a little bit of backstory about the Black Donnelly's, and you can look into the Black Donnelly's more if you are interested. A gripping and tragic story of a massacre of a family that was an immigrant family to Canada coming from Ireland. There is varying opinions as to where the Black Donnellys came from. And it isn't something that you would hear nowadays, because for the most part we would never use these type of monikers and names and descriptors. But one of the arguments is that they were known as the Black Donnellys because they were Blackfeet, and Blackfeet were Irish Catholics that refused to fight the English Protestants and wanted to live in peace instead. They came over here during the years, it would have been the years of the Great Famine, and squatted on land in Biddulph, Upper Canada. Biddulph Township would be northwest of what is London right now, I believe about 15 kilometers. But they squatted on the land. They were there for over 10 years before part of the land was sold to another Irish family. That Irish family took them to court. Back then, the Canadian legal system did defend squatters' rights, and they won like a good portion of the land. I think they got something like 200 acres of the north part of the land. Then resentment and hatred just exploded, right? So there was a barn raising, there was a fight with the person who lost 200 acres of his land. In the end, the fight ended because the guy that lost part of his land got hit in the head with a handspike and died a couple days later. Then there was, it's just insanity. There was a fight at the church because the priest, the Holy Father, who started a peace society to create peace in the world and all that. Well, in Biddulph, he was doing his sermon. He was talking about his hatred of the Protestants, and the Donnellys stood up and said, "We are no longer part of this. We're going to go to church in London. You are full of hatred," because they had friends that were Protestant. They didn't care that they had a different religion. And then in 1880 they were massacred, and there was eyewitnesses. There was survivors of the massacre and eyewitnesses. There was 2 trials with the survivor and the eyewitnesses. One of the eyewitnesses being the survivor, but nobody was ever convicted. Anyway, today's beer will be this guy. This is Honey Blonde Ale, and Honey Blonde Ale is not just a beer, it's a story. 4.1% alcohol by volume. Respect the beer. But it's a beer. Troubles Brewing, and again we have brewed in Mitchell, Ontario. blackdonnellys.com. And on top of everything else, the story was suppressed. You weren't allowed to talk about it. It was over a century later before a lot of stuff came out about the Black Donnellys. So everything about them still not fully exposed. There is books, there's a movie, there's pop culture all over the place. That's a beautiful looking beer. I mean, a little brassy, bright white head. There is a snap, crackle, pop, albeit not all that much. Scent out of the can. Well, I know with a honeybee on the can and the respect the beer, there's probably actually honey in this, but they don't actually give you any ingredients or anything. But I don't really smell it. I mean, a lot of honey browns and honey ales and stuff like that, you can smell a sweetness that isn't just malt. When I drink it, maybe, scent out of the glass. Yeah, just kind of malty, bready. Cheers. There is a blanket sweetness on this beer. Soft, easy drinking, mild carbonation, light-bodied. There's that sweetness that envelops everything almost comes off as it's a rice beer. It's not a rice beer, I know, but it almost comes off as a rice beer or a rice wine or anything like that. That sensation, that flavor, that palate tickling. It just covers your mouth, and there is that weird flavor in there. Somewhat dirty. It's interesting. It's really interesting. It really is. So there's a sweetness that envelops everything. At the end, there's a bit of breadiness, but that sweetness, like I said, it gets a little bit of bitter right at the back of the tongue, but it really does leave that mouthfeel as if I just drank a rice wine or a rice beer. And I can't for the life of me, and I used to be able to pronounce, well, not pronounce, but I used to be able to put this into words, but I can't. The weird sensation that's going across my tongue, I can't put it into words. I can't. Out of 10 on the beer? Of the three I've had, probably the worst, but that's still a good beer. I'd give it a 7. I'd buy it again. So, I shouldn't have said the worst. Not the best. My least favorite. I'm trying to be quick, right? I'm trying to be quick and tell the stories and get to the beer and everything. I gotta go. Bye, guys.